My name is John Samia, and I'm Chair of the Shrewsbury Select Board. On behalf of my fellow board members in the Town Manager's Office, we would like to welcome you to our June 11th, 2024 Select Board meeting. Tonight's live broadcast is brought to you by Shannon Butler of the Shrewsbury Media Connection. Tonight's meeting will also be available via the Shrewsbury Media Connection on YouTube starting tomorrow. All of our previous meetings are also currently available on the same platform. Before we begin with the formal part of the agenda, I'd ask that members introduce themselves.
So I'm Beth Cassavant.
Teresa Flynn.
Michelle Conlon.
Carlos Garcia.
Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
Assistant to Town Manager Justin Dobson.
And I'm John Samia. Let's go to preliminaries. First item on the agenda is to approve bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is to review and act to approve the minutes of May 28th, 2024, which was a meeting, and June 4th, 2024, which was a workshop.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, announcements. Colleagues, any announcements?
I've got a few, Mr.
Please.
Chair.
Oh,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So in honor and celebration of Pride Month, just wanted to highlight some community events that are going on. So Wednesday, June 12th, through the library, there is a virtual event, LGBTQ+ inclusion with Allie Kane. Knowledge can empower individuals to make cultural change. This program encourages individuals at all levels of understanding to learn about what it means to be LGBTQ+ and how to be stronger allies so our entire community feels welcome to be their authentic selves. Allie Kane of ALK Consulting is a queer nonprofit leader and lifelong learner committed to creating an inclusive, equitable, and accessible world for individuals with diverse identities and experiences. Those interested in the virtual event can find the link to register on the Shrewsbury Public Library's website. That event is from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. on the 12th. The next one is Wednesday, June 26th. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee will be hosting their first Pride event on Wednesday, June 26th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Dean Park. There'll be ice cream and music, and the committee members will be there. There'll be activities for those interested in attending to participate in. So certainly check that out if you are available. Happening that same day virtually from 6:30 to 7:30 is another program through the library focused on the 1969 Stonewall Rebellion. Join author Milo Todd on Zoom as he discusses the Stonewall Rebellion, a grassroots movement that sparked LGBTQ+ rights across the country. What happened during the multi-night rebellion around the Stonewall Inn in June of 1969? What was the first thing thrown and who threw it? Who took part and who stayed away? Hear the details of what happened and how this ultimately led to the creation of Pride Month. Those interested in that virtual event can also find the link to register on the Shrewsbury Public Library's website. That's all I got.
Thank you, Carlos. Any other announcements?
I have
Beth.
one. So I did just want to update the board and the community on the work being done by the Municipal Facilities Optimization Committee. That is the new building committee that was recently formed. The task is to take a look at the facilities at South Street, both the water and sewer building and the town garage. Both of those buildings, as we received a report at the end of March of this year, are nearing the end of their useful life. And so decisions need to be made around whether we want to make repairs to things like the roof or the HVAC system, or if we are looking to perhaps build new or renovate. And so this committee consists of Pat Pitney, who was the chair of the Police Station Building Committee, Stephen Walsh, Mike Liberty, Keith Baldinger, and myself. The first meeting we held just sort of to get ourselves up and running, and then just last night we met again to choose the owner's project manager for the project. We'll be meeting again next week to take a tour of the facilities at South Street and also to take a look at Town Hall, because depending on what happens at South Street, that may free up space at Town Hall, and we might need to be able to, sort of work through movement around in the Town Hall So just wanted to give that update, and I'll continue to do so at our meetings to keep the community informed as we work towards a solution for this building.
Great, thank you. Any others? I have one, the Shrewsbury Development Corporation and Sustainability Committee. The deadline to apply for vacancies on the SDC Board of Directors and the Sustainability Committee has been extended to June 18th, 2024. Please visit the town website to apply for these positions. And that's all I have. So next item, Town Manager's Report. Mr. Mizikar.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Next item is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31 to offer citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during the Select Board meetings on matters within the board's authority. No one has expressed a desire to speak this evening. However, those wishing to speak at a regularly scheduled meeting should notify the chair through the Select Board's office by noon on the Monday prior to the next regularly scheduled meeting by written correspondence or email at selectboard@shrewsburyma.gov. Next item in the agenda, under meetings and hearings, it's past 7:05. It's a 7:05 public hearing, review and act on the application of OMI BBQ Shrewsbury, Inc., doing business as OMI Korean BBQ, 88-120 Boston Turnpike, and Shiyu Chang Huang, manager for an on-premise Section 12 all alcoholic beverages pouring license and common victualler license. I believe we have Mr. Huang and a representative of Who Law Office online. If you could,
Yes.
if you could
Good
introduce.
evening.
Good evening. If you could introduce yourselves, please.
Yes, my name is Mei Hui Hu. I represent the applicant, Ami BBQ Shrewsbury Inc. This is a new business located at 100 Boston Turnpike in Shrewsbury. We have been, for the past 2 years, working on renovating the space, and it's going to be a very exciting restaurant, up and coming, and we're hoping to wrap up the renovation later in July. In the meantime, we are getting our application ready to apply our CV licenses and alcohol licenses. The proposed manager, Shu Chen Huang, he has been in the restaurant business industry for over 10 years. He's working in restaurants where full alcohol licenses are where the alcohol beverage license alcohol beverages are served. So he is well experienced in the service of alcohol. He also is tip certified, so that he then be able to have sufficient knowledge to train his staff and making sure that all the services are properly rendered, including carding, including making sure that employees are able to observe the patrons. As you may know, as the name of the business imply, this is a Korean style barbecue service. We apply for alcohol license really just to try to provide our patrons a more complete dining experience. The main service and main profit of our business is still focusing on the food. The alcohol service is really just to enhance our patrons' dining experience. And we're here, and the proposed manager's here as well. We're here to answer any question you might have with our application.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the board?
No questions.
Pretty straightforward. Anything from you, Ms. Mizikar? This is a public hearing. Anyone from the audience like to ask any questions? Not seeing any. I'll
Move to
ent-
close. Move to close public hearing.
Second.
I've been moved in second, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move the board approve the on-premises Section 12 all alcohol beverages pouring and common victualler license application of OMI BBQ Shrewsbury Inc., DBA Omni Korean BBQ contingent upon providing proof of liquor liability and workers' compensation insurance and upon the issuance of certificates of occupancy and inspection.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for coming, and good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The motion was longer than the hearing.
Well, materials were very fulsome. Next item on the agenda, it's a continued public hearing to review and act on the cable television franchise application of Spectrum Northeast LLC, an indirect subsidiary of Charter Communications Inc. As those watching may recall, on May 28th, we had an initial public hearing. Once an application has been received, it's required by applicable law to hold a public hearing, or in our case, we continued the public hearing. We originally were scheduled to have a continuance to today. However, we received an email from one of the members of the contingent that presented to us requesting a continuance, stating in light of the comments at the hearing and some challenges around schedules, we would like to take some additional time. At this point, request that we continue the public hearing into July 23rd, 24. So that is part of the process, part of the regulations. We received the application and the hearing process. We hear feedback from the public. We've also received it by email. We'll go over it later at the end. Correspondence, and we'll continue this on July if that's the will of the board. If that is, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to continue the public hearing until the board's meeting on July 23rd, 2024.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item under meetings and hearings, it's a meeting with Harrison Howard, Shrewsbury High School class of 2025 regarding Civic Access Project. Good evening.
Good evening. Should we stand up here?
It's if you could, thank you. If you could introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Harrison Howard, and I'm a junior at Shrewsbury High School. Not too long ago, my dad and I were cleaning up some litter in our neighborhood. There's 4 types of litter we found and ideas for how to stop it. The first source of litter was garden supply waste and also mostly recycled items that were blown out of recycling bins with no lids, or wind scattered plastic for the most part. Because let's be real here. Nobody eats a whole rotisserie chicken in the woods and then just leaves the plastic cover there. It's a good thing Shrewsbury's already come up with a solution, one that I am in support of: larger recycling bins with lids. This stops more from coming, but we still must clean up all the windblown recycling that still remains there. Town Dave cleanup suggested. Also, the second source of litter was single-serving containers, mostly snack wrappers, candy wrappers, and bottles, mostly from soda and energy drinks. This is likely from people littering because the wrappers and bottles were still dirty and did not look like they'd been cleaned and or recycled. A solution, potentially? Set up signs just outside of the places these items are sold, informing them on how to dispose of these items properly. This could also work for alcohol/nip bottles, as seen below. And like I just said, the third source of litter that we found was small alcohol/nip bottles and beer cans. it's likely coming from those who toss it, who are embarrassed about their drinking, hiding their alcohol use, possibly underage. But I don't want to point fingers. It might not be. It's likely someone who's embarrassed about their drinking habits or something like that. A solution is more accessible resources for alcoholics in Shrewsbury. And if it already exists, I don't know, put up more signs for it, perhaps? Maybe some sort of Alcoholics Anonymous? Here's an ad campaign / public service announcement idea. Don't let your alcohol problem become our litter problem. And the fourth and last, but certainly not least, actually it is a little bit least, source of pollution is dog poop bags and broken dog toys that were just left there after being used. Here's a solution. Identify areas where dogs are walked frequently and have the Public Works Department install public waste bins in those areas. Something that could work hand in hand with this is increasing funding for the Public Works Department for additional picking up of waste in those areas. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. It was well done.
You're welcome.
I have one question before I open it up, or it's more of a comment. One of the main takeaways really is it's up to everyone to do their part to keep our town clean. When you talked about the single-service containers, the small alcohol nips, beer cans, dog poop bags, that it's important that everyone does their part and be reminded that it's their responsibility to make sure that our town remains a great place to live.
That's true. And just looking at some of the other civic action projects that students did in my class, a lot of them seem to be related to picking up litter. One project in particular actually was about somebody from my class cleaned up a lot of the trash on the side of Holden Street. I don't want to stray too far from the topic at hand, but I do agree with you that that making sure our town is welcoming and clean is something that we should all have on our mind always. I agree with you there.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions?
Thanks for coming in, Harrison. This is awesome, and I really appreciate that you and your dad go out and pick up litter when you're out in your neighborhood. That's really important, and I think it's something that everybody should kind of do their part doing. I like your slogan ideas, and I like some of the solution ideas that you have, especially the dog poop bags. That's something I've noticed a lot. Like when I go out for walks, there are some areas where I commonly see bags abandoned, in the woods or on the side of the road. And I think I saw today or yesterday a post went out from the town about the hazards of leaving behind your dog waste, and it has so many impacts. It can make dogs sick. It can, kill your lawn. It can, add pollution to our lakes and waterways. So that's a really good idea about installing waste bins in some public areas where we see like those bags being abandoned more often. So, but I really appreciate that you did this. It's good work, and I participate in the townwide cleanup every year, and I see all the same things that you have here. That's everything that we see is on that board. So, so I agree, and I appreciate your suggestions.
Thanks. It means a lot to hear that.
Beth?
Harrison, how did you get interested in litter and as your project?
Well, I started out doing this as like a project to get points on my civic action project, but once I realized just what a crucial issue it was to the town at hand, I decided to base my entire project around it.
Great. Anyone else?
I'll just say thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. Could I ask that you take a picture of that board and send it to our website?
Of course, we'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I didn't have a question, just a comment.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Harrison, thank you for being here and for identifying a problem and wanting to make a difference. It's not easy to come up to a meeting and present your ideas, so really commend you for that. So thank you.
Done a wonderful job. So thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks to all of you. Yeah, this took a lot of perseverance, courage, and practice.
It shows. So thank you.
See you later.
Bye. Thank you for coming. Next item on the agenda under meetings and hearings is a meeting with Christopher McGoldrick, Director of Planning and Economic Development, for an update on the MBTA Communities Act compliance. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you, members of the board, for having me this evening. As mentioned, we'll provide an update on our status of the MBTA community zoning. Before I do get into the weeds, I just want to provide a brief reminder that there's a wealth of information detailing the town's efforts to date on this topic on the town's website, on the planning board webpage. We encourage everyone to go there. It includes all the information that I'm sure the board is aware of, and residents following this are aware of. We update it daily, and for those who haven't yet had the opportunity to dig into this zoning initiative, that information is all available. So starting briefly, so the mandatory mixed use, we did receive feedback from the state on our application for the mandatory mixed use district. That initial feedback was received, and the state determined that the district does not meet the two-part test that's identified in Section 5C of the guidelines. More specifically, although the proposed district is an eligible location, it does not, in the state's opinion, have existing village-style or downtown development, which is essential to preserve pedestrian access to amenities. Although planning staff reserves some opinion with regards to this determination, a revised proposal without a mandatory mixed-use option has been evaluated due to changes in anticipated housing projects. Staff sees this revised proposal as a preferred alternative to the original proposal. A mixed-use development would still be allowed under this zoning. It simply would not be required. Understanding EOHLC's interpretation of that language, it's important to note that we think it's likely that the only area in town where a mandatory mixed-use option would be available would be the town center district. And that is not where we're proposing the district. So if we can pull up the next slide, please. So this is our revised proposal. For those familiar, we are still overlying the Shrewsbury Commons area. The site has shifted westward from where it was originally proposed, coming off of Walnut Street and away from the Christmas Tree Shops Plaza and towards the Centec Park North Industrial Development. Included, so to the bottom of this, to the south of the district, the bottom of the slide in orange is the Emerald Run 40B development, and that parcel inclusive. On the red line just north of that is Route 20, where we have 409 South Street, as well as some of the commercial space, Emily's Interiors along Route 20. And then to the east of that is the Shrewsbury Commons development, so as and denoted in green. So it's important to note that, as you can see from this, primarily the land within the district as proposed as an overlay is substantially those three parcels, with some minor commercial developments included. The revised proposal was selected as it's responsive to long-standing resident feedback. It allows us to achieve a density units per acre of 15, which is the lowest, the minimum that we can set our district. We have set that as our maximum allowable by right density. It limits rezoning of available commercial acreage, and it considers existing or proposed multifamily residential communities and where the district is drawn. It limits the impact on commercial and zoning districts except where residential planning or development is already planned or underway. Leverage sites with the current high-density housing, i.e. the commons, while including sites with those multifamily residential proposals. 33 Green Street, which is proposed for 300 units, and 409 South Street, which is conceptual but maturing. We've seen a number of developer interests with conceptual plans interested in less than 3 years. So as mentioned before, this zoning district pulls away from the Walnut Street area, which has less active development pressure, and that portion of the district did rely on the Christmas tree shops area to meet a contiguous parcel requirements. The inclusion of the 409 South Street parcel allows the 33 to 69 Green Street parcel Emerald Run to meet those contiguous parcel requirements under the 3A guidelines. The district would not be permissible without including that 409 South Street parcel, which is currently commercially zoned and therefore was not previously considered for formal evaluation. The mixed use, again, will still be allowable, but would not be required under the current zoning as proposed. The revised proposal is highly refined with regards to the net new units, which was an additional concern brought to us by the board and by residents, and we'll discuss that in more detail in some of the presentation slides. Before we get into that, the pre-adoption timeline. This plan was submitted to the Commonwealth for pre-adoption review on June 5th, 2024. The 90 days for the Commonwealth to reply to this lands on September 3rd, 2024, so we expect a formal response from them either on or prior to that date. Another important note is that the economic feasibility analysis was conducted prior to the district as originally proposed. This element is required for the affordable housing component to be allowable over 10%, which is the minimum. That original proposal of the district as previously proposed justified a 15% affordability requirement. We're currently working with the consultant to evaluate the potential, and we were at that time working with the consultant to evaluate a potential to justify and implement the maximum allowed of 20% affordability. We've again, having revised the district, we've contacted the consultant and are conducting a meeting to revise that zoning and revise the economic feasibility analysis with the revised zoning and that will be coordinated along with the state pre-adoption review. We are still recommending that whatever that economic feasibility analysis provides, that we pursue the maximum affordability component under that. So with that, we'll go into some of the slides here. So I wanted to pull out, again, those three major parcels. So we have the large parcel details. So the Shrewsbury Commons, that acreage of those combined parcels is approximately 53 acres. The modeled unit capacity at 15 dwelling units per acre comes out to 593 units. There's an existing 587 units on the site currently, which means that under this zoning, there would be a net new units at 15 dwelling units per acre of 6. The 409 South Street has an approximate acreage of just shy of 20 acres. That modeled unit capacity at 15 dwelling units per acre comes out to 291. There's currently no existing units on that site, but one of the most recently reviewed concepts proposed approximately 198 units. Emerald Run is approximate acreage of 40 acres, a little over. That model unit capacity is 15 dwelling units per acre. There's, again, no units existing on that site, but the proposed 40B being evaluated at the site is 300 units. Next slide, please. What that totals up to for our total district details is an area of approximately 118 acres. The modeled unit capacity at 15 dwelling units per acre is 1,512. The existing units under that district is 588. The net new units of 15 dwelling units per acre would be 924. That would be 426 without considering the 40Bs. So with the 40Bs also built, so 426 above that amount. It's important to note that includes some of those small commercial parcels on Route 20, which would allow for residential by right. That's simply Emily's Interiors and Max at Work are the two parcels included. So we don't have to go through this, but this is the actual snapshots from the compliance model showing how those calculations play out. Important to note, again, just as a reminder, our capacity requirement is 1,497 units. And again, this district as proposed models out to 1,512. So it is highly tuned to meet the minimum requirements that we are expected to for compliance with the bylaw, or with the mandate, rather.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Mr. McGoldrick, can you just clarify what you said regarding the economic feasibility analysis, that we are still pursuing the 20%, but when we submit sort of this revised proposal, is it possible that the 15% that we achieved could go back down to 10?
Correct. That's a
Okay.
possibility. So, so our recommendation is whatever that economic feasibility analysis, when it's reevaluated, justifies that we pursue that maximum affordability component. Under the original proposed zoning, we were justified at 15%. The consultant had noted that they got a mixed result for the 20%, and they were coordinating with the state on how they would review that mixed result, if that would be allowable. So that question at this point for us is moot. We need to reevaluate with this district if there's an adjustment, if that 15% as originally modeled is still justifiable, or if it may make that 20% justifiable as well. But it could say that there's a lower threshold needs to be pursued. So we'll be looking at those numbers with the consultant to try and see what that maximum amount that we can justify is.
I have a follow-up on that question.
Go ahead.
So we're able to submit more than one economic feasibility approval request? Because I know, like, we can only submit one zone for pre-adoption. So we can do this again.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah, so the economic feasibility analysis is similar to the compliance model. We can run that with the consultant as many times as needed. We do have to submit that along with our pre-adoption review and with the final zoning compliance. We submitted the prior economic feasibility analysis with a narrative that we are actively working to reevaluate that. That will be submitted to the state along with that pre-adoption review, which has already been submitted. We'll send that to EOHLC for them to consider that component. But substantially, there's no change to our bylaw as written. It simply, The only change that would be done is there's the percentage of what we call out for anything developed under this district, what that affordability component will be. So we'll just change that one number in that 13-page bylaw that we've proposed.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, but if 409 South were a 40B project, you'd get the full rentals, you'd get the full credit anyways, right? In terms of at least towards the calculation of 40B, right?
So all of those projects would be eligible for the subsidized housing inventory? Is
Right,
that-
right.
Yep.
So in that sense, you'd still have, we had talked a while ago about moving towards 10%, or the strategy available to us because we're not at 10%, and depending on the number of units and getting a moratorium. Right.
Understood, yeah, so-
In that sense, this is beneficial, at least on both sides of looking at everything here.
Understood. So under 40B, they're required to do 25% of affordable units. We would, under this bylaw, if we're not justified, well, we aren't justified to do 25% in any condition. So we would only be able to capture the units that are deed restricted. We are not able to capture the market rate onto the SHI.
Okay. Other questions? Michelle.
I have a few questions kind of all over. So I'm looking at the acreage that we have, I think that we're proposing here. Is it, I'm sorry, can you remind me of the acreage that we're looking at here?
So it's 118 acres.
118, and we're required to do 50 acres.
Correct.
So can you just explain why we're doing so many more acres?
Yep, yeah, so the acreage is not in a vacuum. That's not a component that's in a vacuum. We also need to meet that unit capacity requirement of the 1,400. And so at a minimum, if we were to do 15 units per acre and achieve that 1,400 units, we would need to do at least 100 acres. We could play with those numbers and increase the density, thereby doing 50 acres at a higher density in order to achieve that capacity requirement. But we were in choosing these parcels and that acreage, our strategy was to seek lower densities in line with the community outreach that we conducted, and propose more acreage under the zone at lower densities.
Is this so like we don't have like towers, but we have, 3-4-story buildings versus an 8-story building?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Sure,
I
go
have
ahead.
A few more.
Yeah.
So on the proposal map, there's the 3 areas that have a shaded border. There's like a green shaded border, a blue one, and an orange one. And there's a few areas that are shaded in yellow that are outside of those. I think the 2 that are on Route 20 are those 2 commercial properties that you mentioned.
Correct.
And then what is the one to the left of South Street?
So that's
The west.
actually a single-family home. It is still part of the parcel of 409 South Street,
Okay.
but has not been, it's across the street, so it's a separate parcel.
Okay, all right. And then there's, is that like another single-family home that's on, I think it's Green Street, that sort of like butts into the Emerald Run parcel? And is that one, that's not included in the proposal?
Correct. So the Green Street, that emerald, so that's in orange to the south. So there's actually, and you can see, so there's one that cuts, that's a single-family home that cuts into it, that's existing. And then there's kind of that L shape at the very south of that district. There's 2 additional single-family homes there, and those were both carved out. We didn't need that acreage. Again, we were fine-tuning, really at the parcel level of what got us closest to that 1,400 units.
Okay, all right. And then regarding, affordability and the percentages that we're pursuing, is there a mechanism to give preference on those units, on affordable units to Shrewsbury residents and municipal employees?
Yeah, so we can evaluate that. Certainly, through the 40B process, that's something that the town can evaluate is the local preference, which through that housing lottery gives preference to Shrewsbury residents. We can certainly try and evaluate if that language can be included in the bylaw. We do require the regular deed restrictions, but I don't know if we expressly specify the
Local preference.
local preference
Okay.
currently.
And is that something that would happen at the project level, or could that be something that's included in the bylaw? And like, how is that only if it's a 40B, or is it if it's any project in this area?
Yeah, so EOHLC has a program, the local action units, which 40Bs are subject to, or considered under. Our language really closely mirrors pursuing that local action unit. So whether or not it needs to be explicitly spelled out in the bylaw, or if it's captured by that, we'll take another look to make sure that local preference is included, or the option for the community to pursue local preference
Okay,
of a project is included.
all right. I think that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? Carlos?
Just
Sure.
two quick ones, thank you. Just going back to the economic feasibility analysis, how long does it take for us to get those results back? You may have said it, but I
Mhm.
missed it.
So the consultant the first time around had approximately a 3-week turnaround. Given the workload of those consultants at this time, I would anticipate perhaps a little bit longer. We did tee them up with the draft language of the bylaw well before that, but I'm hoping for a very quick turnaround for that feasibility analysis.
Thank you. I'm hoping for a quick one too.
I'll have a better timeline next week, and I can provide that to the board.
And then I just want to make sure I'm following the district calculations slide here. So net new units, you have it broken down into two ways. So without 40B, there could be a net new units of 924, but with 40B, it's 426.
Correct, yeah, so with those two projects, if they were presumably built out as proposed, there would be an additional 426 units allowable under this district.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so just a question about Emerald Run. That seems to be the largest area for vulnerability as far as a swing in the number of potential units. And I understand that they are pretty far down the road in the planning, with the planning and, or actually with the ZBA, and then with conservation, right? So what do you see as the possibility, understanding the topography of the site also, I think kind of limits where buildings can go? What do you see as like the likelihood of that project changing from 40B to take advantage of MBTA zoning overlay instead?
I think it's a difficult question. I think the developer I would anticipate would evaluate that option to see if there's a benefit to doing so. They are quite well along in that process currently. In addition, that site is subject to a number of topographical constraints, wetlands considerations. I do believe that project is proposed, when we look at that project, to put it plainly, it's at more stories than would be allowable under the current zoning. It includes parking under, and so I do believe that project likely, to some extent, maximizes what's buildable under that lot. I never assume and
Right.
would never say that it's not buildable at a greater scale under some different model, but I think that's somewhat telling that it's largely already proposed at that scale. And I do think that given the site considerations, the model of the project would have to change significantly, and that would come at significant cost. The developer would have to evaluate if there's benefit to doing so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So, one thing I think is important,
No, go ahead, John.
No, I just, all I was gonna say is this, so at the second FinCom hearing, the analysis about additional resources that would be required to be appropriated by the town under this, if we could revise that in terms of if this is accepted, what would the impact potentially be on schools, on infrastructure, on public safety, using the same methodology that you did, if we could just revise it? I think it was very helpful. I think it explains a lot, being able to walk through what it could be, assuming, utilizing history to understand what the potential costs would be. I think it, just to right size it to this, I thought it was a very helpful analysis when we heard that a month and a half ago. Teresa, go ahead.
I don't have a question so much as well, you had referenced the website, Chris, and maybe this is something that we can sort of take a step back and improve for, people that want to get updated here. It's not intuitive. So if I might not even know as a resident to go to the planning department page versus the planning board page. But even when I land on that page, you have to go to grants and initiatives to get to MBTA zoning initiatives. And I just don't think that, I've heard from a lot of people when they go to sort of look for this, and then there's sort of everything we've done, but I feel like we need to organize it. So as an example, how do we update that so that this most recent proposal is sort of front and center and people can get familiar with it? And I assume we're going to go over the process from here where we will, obviously have more community engagement and public hearings. But is it possible to maybe streamline, maybe take things that are no longer being considered and still have them available, but archive them a little bit and just really have what people need to focus on right now?
Yeah, I think obviously there's been a wealth of information, and we're probably due for a reorganization on the website to make that more intuitive. So I'm always happy to take suggestions on how we can do that. I do, the buttons that we have for the on both the planning board and the planning department webpage. I believe they're on the landing page. It's the big red button, but we can look at. I think they're towards the bottom, but we can look at moving those up further to make them more prominent in front and center.
You are correct when you do scroll down. So
Yeah.
I stand corrected on that. I also, I don't know if the zoning proposals for the annual town meeting are still relevant or we can move those away. But you're right, if you scroll down, there's a fairly large icon. So I apologize for this.
I would say
I still stumbled with the grants and initiatives start, but I get what you're saying.
I would say you're right too, that you shouldn't have to scroll for this
No,
initiative. We can make it front and center.
It's fair. So thank you for that.
Board members, any other questions?
I have comments, more than questions.
Go ahead.
So I think it's important to sort of just walk back a little bit, right? The decision was made early on in this process to engage the public and gather feedback, understanding that we have one opportunity to submit a proposal to the state for pre-adoption approval. This board decided in May, after hearing all of that feedback, that we would ask town meeting to vote no on this so that we could reconsider it in the fall. The reason for doing that was so that we could take into account that public feedback. So the proposal that eventually would go to the state for the pre-adoption would be the one that was considerate of what we were hearing for, I think it was probably 5 months, if not more. That was a judgment call, right? Some people will agree with it, some people will not agree with it, but here is where we are right now. So June 5th is when the clock starts, and we know, and we're going to talk about a timeline that we're marching toward town meeting. When I look at this proposal, I jotted down some things that I think are responsive to the feedback that I heard just sitting in the room on various occasions, that it no longer abuts Northborough's zone. There was a lot of concern about that relative to the potential for a lot of traffic to be centered all in one place. I think that I heard quite a bit about Walnut Street from the Walnut Street neighbors asking for the preservation of the character of their neighborhood. So by moving this away from Walnut Street, I think you achieve that. It takes advantage of areas where there is likely to be development. So we already understand that Pulte is working their way through the process of housing or siting a 40B on this site here, Emerald Run. We know that 409 South Street is likely to be developed into housing. We've had one proposal come before us that fell apart due to financial reasons from the developer, but we're already hearing it bubble up again and understand that it's a likely scenario. So it takes advantage of that. It takes advantage of the existing structures at Shrewsbury Commons. We know that's not going to get bulldozed and someone's not going to build again to create more units there. So I think that that's really smart. And it preserves the commercial property at the Christmas tree shop. So we're not going to lose that to housing unless someone comes in and decides that they're going to put a 40B there. And that is not something that we can control. It maintains 15 units per acre, which I also heard loud and clear from the community. We're not looking to have something that looks like the Arrive building in Westboro. I think it's the Otis Street intersection near Target and Walmart. We want something that's lower profile. And then the other piece is the Route 20 improvements. And I'm not sure how many residents are aware of the project that is in motion, that was worked on very much by our state representative, our state senator, Congressman McGovern, to make sure that there's funding in place to do those necessary improvements on Route 20. And by citing the zone here, yes, it would create additional units of housing potentially, but it's also going to be in an area where the roadways are going to be, at some point in the future, able to accommodate that. The other thing, and this is just my own personal opinion, I still think that compliance is the right decision for the town of Shrewsbury. I'm still committed to that compliance. I believe that the grants that we have received, have shaped Shrewsbury into the community that we have right now, have contributed to our economic growth and development, have helped to reduce the burden on residents as far as their taxes, because the more commercial growth we have, the better that is for residents and their tax bills. So the loss of potential grants in the future is very concerning to me. And not going forward with this would result in the loss of those grants. Just from reading that I've done, while I think that the intention behind MBTA zoning was to create housing, I don't actually think it's going to create the kind of housing that the legislature anticipated. And while I am a proponent of affordable housing, I recognize that this isn't going to solve the affordable housing issue that we face. So those are just some thoughts that I have, and I appreciate the work that you've put into this. And I just hope that residents understand that now that this is submitted, the feedback opportunity isn't really there right now.
But as you had mentioned, it's incorporated the feedback received to date.
Correct. But we're not going to change it now. We have to wait and see what the state says to us and then go from there.
Correct. And the one other piece that you said about compliance that we saw with the Attorney General's office with Milton, that the SJC is going to hear that in October regarding compliance and enforceability of that, and depending on the outcome. But if you read the brief, if you read what the AG filed, it's either a community controls its own destiny or they're seeking for the ability to do it themselves. So time will tell. I don't think by October we're going to have anything from the AG, from this SJC. But we have time here to see what continues to unfold throughout the Commonwealth, if any changes are made. I know at times there's been some fluidity in terms of interpretation of mixed-use offset. Could it apply? That was originally not even part of the equation. So time here as we talked about on May 2nd, when we voted not to recommend the article and to table it at town meeting, also gives us time for residents to ask questions during office hours, reach out to us through the town manager's office to have smaller discussions. We can talk sort of broader picture timeline in a minute, but those smaller conversations to ask those questions. So that's still an opportunity. We talked about that at town meeting. Also mentioned that to town meeting members at that time, and would ask that, take us up on it. If you have questions, let us know. And we can figure out either smaller groups or larger groups to answer questions. A lot of information, and it can be overwhelming. If you break it out into buckets in terms of why do we have to do this is one bucket, what have we done to date is another bucket, and now what are we presenting and why is another bucket, to put it there so someone can get the history lesson, what we've done and where we are today and why and what it means relative to where we were. I think it's helpful, but it's right now, it's compliance, not only the right thing to do, but you're looking at enforcement action if you don't. That, we have till 12/31/24.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Sure.
Maybe ask a question. If we can't submit a pre-adoption, again, we've submitted our pre-adoption, and our logic for submitting the pre-adoption was based on community feedback that they kind of want to know with certainty that it is something that the state has evaluated and has a likelihood of passing. But say we get the pre-adoption back and the state says, yes, based on what you've submitted, this looks like it would be approved. There's no guarantee, but it looks like it would be approved. We could still submit something as a final after that, correct? I mean, the pre-adoption was optional. And so if we decide to change our mind after the fact, we can still do that. We can still submit a final proposal to the state that it is not aligned with our pre-adoption.
Correct. So the pre-adoption was optional and it remains optional. We can adjust the zoning if need be prior to town meeting. We would not be able to get any pre-adoption review
Right.
From that.
Right. I just want to make sure that we're, we could debate about compliance versus non-compliance. At the end of the day, I agree. I think we have a responsibility, I'll speak for myself, to give town meetings something that is a path to compliance if they should vote for compliance. So that is really what I see as the primary intent here, is that we're putting forth something to town meeting that we're confident that the state will approve if we submit it as our plan. So I just want to be careful about, people feeling like they don't still have a say. We still want the feedback. There's still opportunity, but this plan, as you've outlined, appears very much, as Beth had said, aligned with a lot of the feedback we heard. And I think most importantly, doing everything we can to sort of mitigate more extensive growth. So really maximizing what already exists or what is likely to exist, even absent this overlay. So, but I just want to make sure that people know that, we're not shutting off feedback or public comment or people sharing their opinions.
Right. And if I may, I will always accept feedback. I think the critical piece now, and we had stated this when we held the proposal for the fall town meeting, is that I think the critical area for public input at this point is on the bylaw as written. So that bylaw, as the language that was proposed, that language is still substantially the same. That's what we submitted with only minor adjustments related to the mandatory mixed use. So we are still submitting that language to the state. We'll post that revised language, what was actually submitted for the public to review. And I think that is the critical piece at this point, to focus discussions around that. And are there pieces in there that we're missing? I think it's very comprehensive in terms of how we wrote it. I'm very confident that it will pass. If there's comments that we receive, I think we will probably pause until we see the state's compliance or pre-adoption review comments before we make any major adjustments. But certainly welcome that feedback. And I just when we say when those aren't immediately put into the bylaw or immediately made as revisions. I just want to, it's not being dismissive of any comments that we receive. We'll evaluate any comments that are received and see what the best path of incorporating that is, if we can.
Thank you.
Board members, questions, comments? Carlos?
Just some comments. So, Chris, thank you for this presentation, and appreciate your work on this for however long you've been doing it. It feels like a long time, and I think that you have done a good job at incorporating some feedback that we have heard. I also did want to take this opportunity to just share with the community. So it's no secret that I'm an employee of the Attorney General's office. It's been alluded to in our meetings and in other places. So I have had several conversations with the Ethics Commission throughout my time here on the board, and also with General Counsel at the AGO. I do have on file at the Attorney General's office and at the Town Clerk's office disclosure forms of my dual roles that I hold. And state law does allow me to participate in these conversations. So I again appreciate the work that all town staff have done for this, and I look forward to continuing to engage with you and the community on what it is that we're trying to do here and what it is that was being asked of us. So thank you.
Thank you. So we've talked, given comments, next steps. So what happens next? If I could turn it over to you, Mr. Mizikar.
We're going to have Mr. Dobson just share a document that we've been working on internally to reference some dates. So Mr. McGoldrick identified that the zoning was submitted to the Commonwealth for review on June 5th, and that their 90-day window would expire on September 3rd. So first and foremost, I just want to highlight that from our traditional date, which is for the last 5 or 6 years has been the third Monday in October, I think we need to delay the special town meeting to November 18th, which would be the third Monday in November, so 1 month delayed. I see this playing out through the formal process, generally at this time, that the planning board would jump right on top of kind of reviewing the zoning in its entirety, the map and the pre-adoption feedback at their, obviously it's their agenda, but potentially their September 5th meeting, just a couple days after. We're going to try to push to get feedback from the state as soon as possible, because I think that, you know, getting the formal process started on the 5th is really important. Again, this is all subject to actually being scheduled out, but then with regards to the additional work of the planning board on October 3rd, which is a regular meeting, and then a special meeting on October 24th to conduct the two associated public hearings for MBTA zoning. With regards to the select board, we're of course here on June 11th. We provided the feedback that we've received from the Commonwealth on the mixed use proposal that is not going to work, so we are not going to get that offset opportunity. And then if we fast forward to after the compliance or the window for pre-adoption compliance review closes at your meeting on September 10th, we'd pick up and review a presentation from the planning board and have the select board vote to schedule that public hearing process. There's this dance that the board is familiar with the planning board that needs to occur in accordance with the general laws as far as how we change our zoning bylaws and what the role of the planning board is and what the role of the select board is. So this is what really starts in early September and, you know, happens early in the month. And then when we look at the special town meeting itself, having the board sign the warrant at a traditional time in advance of that meeting around your first meeting in October, and then reviewing article recommendations on the 12th of November. For this board, like the planning board, we would need one special meeting, although it's not associated with MBTA zoning, but we're required to submit for a tax rate by the end of November. So rather than delay that to the final week, because there's some nuances that happened at the staff level after the board votes to determine the how the structure of the tax rate will be filed with the state, I'd propose that we do that meeting as a special meeting the third Tuesday of November. Finance Committee, as far as their role in the process, would preview the special town meeting warrant after the board signs it, and that would be on Thursday, October 17th. And then their public hearing for the special town meeting warrant would be on November 7th, and that's the first Thursday. So there is a conflict between Finance Committee and the Planning Board, which is why we need that special meeting of the Planning Board on the 24th. So with regards to the public information sessions and feedback, we will look to schedule some of those within the 90-day window. Again, we don't want to mislead anyone. We've submitted this pre-adoption. We do want to continue to receive feedback. We've done a lot of public engagement throughout the winter, and we will engage with the community on this again, but it's not going to be as robust as it was, through the early part of the winter. But then, once we hit beginning of September until that middle part of November, when we go to special town meeting, there'll be, at least 5, opportunities for public meetings or public hearings on MBTA zoning. So a pretty rigorous schedule once we get through summer. I don't want to rush it, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Questions on the schedule? Go ahead, Beth.
Is there going to be, I think there is, but like there is a standalone planning board meeting where it's just MBTA zoning feedback, public hearing?
The 24th is what I'm looking at. Yeah, the 24th.
Okay, it's just, and I'm sure you know this as well, right? There's so much on the planning board's plate that they get through these really big hearings for development, and then the MBTA zoning is like 10 o'clock at night, and everybody's, ready to go home, tired, not at their best. And I would like to see it be more front and center so that people are more fresh for the opportunity to provide that comment and feedback.
Consistent with what's been going on in the past, figure out a way to distribute this information to town meeting members as well. I think that was very effective. We heard it throughout the town meeting and last month about the information that's been sent out. If we could continue to do that, not only now with what we've been presented with today, but also over the next couple months, including the opportunities. Okay, good. Nothing else? There's no action to be required from this, so good. Right, anything else from you? All right, thank you. We'll go to new business under item 10. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Under new business, item 10, to review and act on the road closure request from Palini Dasi, India Heritage Foundation, for a parade beginning at 100 Maple Avenue and concluding at 226R Grafton Street on Sunday, July 7th, 2024, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. This item requests the board in its capacity as road commissioners to authorize a road closure request for a parade led by the India Heritage Foundation. The route is 1.5 miles, and the parade's expected to be 1.5 hours. There has been a staffing plan. It's been presented to the Shrewsbury Police Department. The staffing plan has proposed 8 detail officers to ensure the safety of participants. Yes?
There's 2 representatives from the foundation here, if you'd like to call them.
Sure.
Forward.
We have members from the foundation if they'd like to come up. Good evening. If you could introduce yourselves. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. My name is Sadananda Das. I'm the president of India Heritage Foundation, Boston. So it's a temple on Grafton Street, pink building, very hard to miss it.
Yes.
And so this festival is called the Car Festival or Rath Yatra, and it happens annually in India. About 1 million people attend in Puri, Jagannath Puri, one place, every year. And it's been happening since centuries. So there have been some requests by our members, the congregation members, if we can have something like this in Shrewsbury, in the town of Shrewsbury. So initially when we approached the town of Shrewsbury, we were thinking of starting the parade from our temple and coming to Dean Park or any other park. There were issues and concerns regarding the parking over there. So we thought of reversing it, starting from the town hall, so that, you know, people can come to our temple, and we have a lot of space to accommodate people and all. So yeah, that's regarding this. I mean, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer on this.
Thank you. As you had mentioned, the parade will proceed down Maple Avenue, turn onto Richard Avenue, and proceed to Municipal Drive and Grafton Street. So this has been thought through. It will be on a Sunday during the summer, which is generally quieter around here as well. And during those times, if you come up through the center, it is pretty quiet. Any questions at all?
Did you say, are we still waiting on the police detail? Is that under review still, or has it been approved?
So there's been a staffing request that Lieutenant Cameron has prepared. He's asked that after this board votes, that we confirm with his office and that they would finalize the detail. So that's why it's subject to the detail being provided.
So, and just to clarify, is it contingent upon the police detail with the 8 officers?
Correct.
Okay, so it's as presented.
Yes.
It's the
Yep.
police
As
detail as
presented.
presented. Okay. There are no questions. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move the board approve the road closure request, Polini Dasi, India Heritage Foundation, for the parade proposed on Sunday, July 7th, 2024, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., contingent upon the provision of police details as outlined.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming this evening.
It's my pleasure. I would like if any one of you are available on that day to join us for some time, or even, you know, when we are starting. We will be very happy and we will be grateful if you are present.
Great.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the road closure request from Guinevere Molina, Lindsay Heffernan, and Brian Murphy for Wachusett Avenue from Bryan Avenue to Longfellow Road on Saturday, June 29th, 2024, from 1:30 to 7 p.m. with a rain date of June 30th, 2024 for a neighborhood block party. They've been doing this for 9 years, no issues at all, and as always, both police chief and fire chief have reported no issues, but emphasize that measures are always taken to ensure that emergency vehicles can pass if needed. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the road closure request from Wes Steskoff and Brian Farrell for the corner of Oak Ridge Way and Knollwood Drive on Saturday, July 13th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. with a rain date of July 20th, 2024 for a neighborhood party. Similar guidance from the chiefs here as well. This happened last year, went out without any issues, and same idea, provided that emergency vehicles are able to pass. No questions or comments? Entertain a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 13, to review and act on an application from Mika Davis for a one-day common victualler license for the Spirit of Shrewsbury Festival for September 28th, 2024, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 14, it's to review and act to designate the following positions as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A. A, substitute teacher, and B, summer program staff member. This item requires the board's vote to designate the positions as special municipal employees so that a current Shrewsbury Public Schools substitute teacher can also be employed as a summer program staff member for Recreation Department. Included in our materials was a letter from Director of Recreation, Laurel Rossiter, outlining the request to designate these two positions as special municipal employees. And this individual would serve the seasonal position of summer program staff member for assistance in our camp-style program. Any questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion.
Move the board designate substitute teacher and summer program staff member as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are going now into correspondence. Number 15, email dated May 24th, 2024, from Paul Lincoln, 310 South Quinsigamon Avenue, regarding observations on South Quinsigamon Ave. So noted. Item 16 is an email dated June 5th from Thomas Grisso, 4 Candlewood Way, regarding comment on 142 Clinton Street project. The comments were sent to the planning board, but we were copied on the correspondence to the planning board and regarding opinions on zoning. So noted. Items 17 through 33, correspondence regarding Charter, Spectrum cable television franchise applications. We've also received correspondence since the last one on June 6th. The correspondence was very similar to what we had heard during our hearing on May 28th. So noted. And the last two items under ZBA decisions, we have 34, a ZBA decision of May 23rd, 2024 from Mark Paris for a variance for property located at 13 John Street. So noted. And last item is a ZBA decision of May 23rd, 2024 for L. Bryant Cheshire for a special permit for property located at 11 Lexington Road. Colleagues, that's it on the formal part of the agenda. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for joining us.